We have to start today by talking about the veritable disaster that Donald Trump's total mishandling of the Kurds in Syria situation has become. And over the weekend, we learned that ISIS fighters are now escaping, potentially reinvigorating ISIS. Trump has been thrown into such disarray by this entire situation that he's now making suggestions as insane as, oh, the Kurds are deliberately freeing ISIS prisoners in order to force the United States to get back involved or to make him look bad or whatever, which is a conspiracy theory that is absolutely without evidence. I mean, there's just no evidence for that, period. And it's quite frankly an insane suggestion, which we'll talk about. And in the background, of course, if you are Russian President Vladimir Putin and you're seeing what Donald Trump is doing, you are laughing all the way to the bank. If you are Turkish President Erdogan and you see what Trump is doing, you are laughing all the way to the bank. So let's first just reset here. I mean, this is just such a huge story. It's just such a geopolitical disaster that we have to have all the information and the context. Donald Trump teased a while ago, months, close to a year maybe at this point, that he was going to get U.S. troops out of Syria. Good. Okay. Now, any good progressive wants to get out of so-called forever wars, out of military engagements with no definite endpoint, military engagements of questionable ethics and morality and practicality and sometimes legality, which often just fuel the military industrial complex. So no argument from me or from any serious progressive. In principle, we don't want U.S. troops involved in any of these places where it is not necessary, legal, and all of the other characteristics that we would want to see. Now, the concern around Syria was that there was no particular reason why it made sense at that point to get out of Syria specifically, because we knew that our presence was partially to defend the Kurds, an ethnic group with their own culture and language, who have been our allies in the fight against ISIS. Now, all normal disclaimers apply when it comes to interventionism. We can't be the world's police. We can't be committed indefinitely to these engagements. But there were definitely places we could have pulled troops from at the time that made more sense and didn't immediately and obviously put some of our allies at risk of death. And of course, it just stunk at the time that it was a move that both Putin and Erdogan would love for the United States to make, since they are a combination of anti-Kurdish and pro-Bashar al-Assad. So we were playing right into their hands. Okay, that was the situation at the time. So then it's quiet for some months. And then last week, Trump says, we're pulling troops from northern Syria. But hold on a second. Turkey is going to attack the Kurds, aren't they? They're going to get slaughtered. Why are you doing this? And Trump tweeted in response to those concerns last week, if Turkey does things I don't like, I'll destroy their economy. I believe his exact word was that he would obliterate their economy. Within hours, Turkey starts bombing Kurdish forces in northern Syria. And all of a sudden, we're wondering, whose idea was this anyway, to pull out of northern Syria? Because the State Department didn't recommend it. The military didn't recommend it. We can't find a reasonable answer to that question other than circumstantially, it plays right into what authoritarian Erdogan wants. It plays right into what authoritarian Vladimir Putin wants. Not good. That gets us to this past weekend, the long weekend here in the United States where we had the Monday holiday. And it is a situation of absolute horror in northern Syria. A New York Times investigation, by the way, over the weekend confirmed that in early May, Russian forces were bombing hospitals in Syria to hurt the anti-Assad movement. We know Putin wants to support Assad. Trump is playing right into that. And the entire region now has turned into absolute and total chaos. We've got videos of Turkish proxies straight up slaughtering people in the streets, a video of people with their hands tied behind their backs, Kurds being shot. Now, even if you wanted U.S. troops out, and even if you wanted U.S. troops out now, which is a reasonable position to have, there was a right way to do it. Donald Trump could have worked with the United Nations peacekeeping forces, or maybe with the Syrian government, I don't know, in advance of just pulling out. and could have negotiated that there has to be some force there to fill in the gap that would be created by Donald Trump pulling forces, pulling troops from northern Syria. But of course, that's not how Donald Trump works. And we now have 700 women and children linked to ISIS who have left a Kurdish detention camp after an airstrike by Turkey dropped the entire area into just total bedlam. We have a U.S. official now who says that ISIS has a, quote, second lease on life as a result of this completely boneheaded decision by Donald Trump. The United States State Department is acknowledging that Havrin Khalaf, the civilian secretary general of the future Syria party, which is the Kurdish movement, has been captured and killed by Turkish-backed Syrian opposition fighters. Syrian Arab fighters have been caught on video, as I mentioned, shooting Kurdish prisoners with their hands tied behind their backs. And Donald Trump is suggesting that it is all a conspiracy. Trump has suggested that the ISIS fighters who escaped were allowed to escape by the Kurds in order to pull the United States back into the region. Trump tweeting, Kurds may be releasing some to get us involved. Easily recaptured by Turkey or European nations from where many came, but they should move quickly. Big sanctions on Turkey coming. Do people really think we should go to war with NATO member Turkey? Never-ending wars will end. And there's a couple really important things here. Number one, there's no evidence of what Donald Trump is proposing here. I mean, there's just no evidence. He can speculate if he wants, but we all need to understand that it's dangerous speculation because there is no evidence that this is some ploy by the Kurds to release ISIS people. There's no evidence of that. And number two, we can't fall for this never-ending wars will end thing because that's not actually what this is about. This is nothing more than motivated, speculative reasoning by Trump to make himself look less bad. The world community is perplexed by what Donald Trump has done here in the United States, ranging from Republicans all the way to Noam Chomsky believe that this was the wrong decision, and the news couldn't be worse out of the region. The Turkish military has recaptured a border area that had come to be under Kurdish control. Turkey now has it. How does Moscow Mitch McConnell spin this? What will Loony Lindsey Graham, or Flimsy Graham, as one viewer suggested I call him, do now that he's said Trump is going to have to suffer the consequences of what happened here if it all goes wrong? And it has all gone very, very wrong. Donald Trump has effectively undone the war against ISIS here. This is potentially a foreign policy disaster that will rival George W. Bush's decision to get into the Iraq war after a dozen and a half Saudi nationals attacked us on 9/11. I don't want to be hyperbolic. I'm not saying it is that yet, but it has the potential to be. And Donald Trump is in his own world of conspiracy theories and tweeting as people are getting slaughtered within a context of ISIS being reinvigorated. Maybe maybe it will rise to the level of a George W. Bush foreign policy blunder. Certainly the biggest foreign policy blunder of Trump's presidency so far.